All right, well, thanks everybody for showing up for the Candidates Night Forum for the Board of Selectmen race with our current Board of Selectmen Chairman Mark Sprague and our Planning Board member Jonathan Keep. So thank you for being here, and thanks to both of you for being here as well. Our plan tonight is for an hour. I'll open up with a couple of questions and then throw it out to you in the audience, and we'll keep going as long as everybody has questions. As I said earlier, this is live and will be rebroadcast, I know, several times over the next 4 weeks, because the election, I believe, is 4 weeks from today on May 9th. And a reminder, of course, that May 2nd is town meeting. The warrant should be showing up fairly soon in the next couple of weeks. So you'll have your chance to go over that. I'll say now, and I'll repeat at the end, that 2 weeks from tonight, on April 25th, in this same room, we're going to have a budget information session. Give people a chance to come in, hear from the advisory committee, school committee, other town officials will be here to answer your questions. By then, you will have your warrants. It's a good chance outside town meeting to come in and ask questions. April 25th, Monday, April 25th at 7:30. So I think it's not something we've done recently. I think it'll be a big help in giving people a forum to come in and ask questions and get more information and feel more prepared for town meeting. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with tonight's forum. So I have a couple of questions to start with, and then we'll move along to yours. One thing town meeting is going to be looking at are several articles related to infrastructure improvements. You know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. Actually, they each have an opening statement, which I'm about to roll right over. So we had a coin toss, and Jonathan will go first, and then Mark.
Thank you. I want to thank the Friends of the Bolton Library and our town moderator, Richard Fry, for organizing this evening. My family moved to Bolton in 2007 after the birth of our second child. Influenced more by our hearts than our heads, we bought the beautiful but neglected Reverend Goss house on the hill next to the library. Slowly but surely, we're working to bring this old property back to life. I think it's going to be a life's work for us, but we're at a nice kind of plateau right now. Our daughter Celeste, who's here tonight, is learning to play the piano at Bolton Community Music School and is looking forward to attending the Showboat High School in the fall. Our son Atticus, he's also here, joined the Boy Scouts last year and is currently enjoying Miss Tro's 3rd grade class at Emerson. Bolton schools and the quality of education they offer is an important issue for our whole family. My wife Marie, she's also here, directs the fine wine department at Skinner Auctioneers. She's volunteered her live auctioneering skills locally, working with the Bolton School Donations Committee and the Bolton Conservation Trust, helping to raise tens of thousands of dollars for education and the Town Common Initiative. I earned my master's degree in landscape architecture in 2001 and started my own design practice while still in graduate school. This spring, a swimming pool and backyard I designed was profiled in New England Home Magazine. It's on the stands now at Shaw's. If you want to check it out. As part of my work, I go before building inspectors, planning boards, and conservation commissions in towns all over Massachusetts to obtain approvals for plans. This work has given me insight into the different ways that towns function. My service to the town of Bolton began by soliciting tree and shrub donations for the public safety building landscape. I've served on the planning board for the last 6 years, 2 of those as chairman. In that time, I chaired a subcommittee to review the mixed-use overlay proposal after it failed at town meeting. After a thorough review and some changes, it passed the following year. The planning board has worked with the design review board and interested citizens in preparing commercial projects like the new Clinton Savings Bank branch, Bolton Office Parks Assisted Living Facility, 626 Main Street and 470 Main Street for construction. These projects show that commercial development in Bolton can be viable, handsome additions to our town, adding services and long-term value. Through volunteering, our family, we have made friends, put down roots, and become part of the Bolton community. Bolton is a town rich with personal and professional talent, as well as one that relies on volunteers for almost everything. I believe that the Board of Selectmen needs to be more open, respectful, and supportive of volunteers and their efforts. If the Board of Selectmen can work collaboratively, more people will participate, sharing what they know, which in turn will help us all make better decisions, which will further strengthen our community. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Mark?
Thank you for everybody for coming. Thanks to the Friends of the Bolton Public Library for sponsoring all of this. Thanks for anybody who sits through this on online or on TV. It's bad enough here. I watched last year's, and it can be slow going at times, but thank you for everybody to participate here. This is actually a very important forum for people to get to know. It's one of the few places where the two of us get to really talk and respond to each other, and not just kind of sound bites passing in midair. Let's see here. I moved to Bolton a little over 23 years ago, so I'm just on the edge of being an old timer. Not quite as old as a few of you I see out there, but certainly I'm getting to be there. Let's see here. I started first house I had was over on Teal Road. Moved over to Kettle Hole, then over on Long Hill. So moved several times, but always within town. I like the town. I've kind of told my wife we're not going anywhere for a while. She doesn't always like that answer, but that's kind of where I stand on it. Let's see, I have two boys who graduated high school. They're now figuring out what they're going to do when they grow up, which is always tough. One went to Neshoba, one went to Minuteman, so I've got very good background and experience with both of the schools. They offer very different educational experiences, and there are students that need to be able to take advantage of all of those offerings. Let's see, in town I've served about 8 years on the Board of Health with 3 or 4 years as the chairman. We rotated through, and just when it was my turn, we did that. Spent a year on the conservation, and then now coming up on 3 years as on the selectmen. I'm an engineer by training, computer engineering out from Rochester, and computer science from WPI. And look forward to hopefully another several years of helping to guide the town and our volunteers in a constructive direction.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Now back to the questions. As I mentioned, there are several articles on the upcoming town warrant that are related to infrastructure improvements. And at the same time, there's been a space needs committee at the high school working on what the future needs, current and future needs are for the high school space, based on curriculum, enrollment, and the like. How would you manage the balance between controlling spending and taxes and addressing the ongoing infrastructure needs of the town? Jonathan, you want to go first? We'll just go back and forth on the order.
Yeah, so first of all, I'll admit that there's going to be a steep learning curve, in taking on this role. In terms of the high school, I know that I think there's been some demographic studies that are showing that the population of school-age children will be dropping. So I think the question is whether we renovate the existing school or whether we, start from scratch. And so I think that's one of those areas where we need to, gather Florence Sawyer School will be coming off the rolls in 2018. And so we as a town need to have a dialogue about what we're gonna do with that savings. We also have revenue coming in from development at Century Mill Estates. The 40B on Sugar Road is being built now, so if you think about that revenue, you know, in 2 to 3 years, you know, if all of those houses are built, that could be like another million and a quarter in tax revenue. So I just think it's very important for us to plan for the future and to think about how we want to spend new tax revenue as well as savings from paying off the Florence Sawyer School.
Mark? I think all of us as homeowners realize that, you know, there's a lot of maintenance that you know, things that you say, yeah, I need to fix this, you know, but then you never get around to it, and what started as a little, you know, a little damp spot in the ceiling all of a sudden is a flood one day. And I think in a lot of places we're kind of starting to move toward the flood with some things. I know 2 of the articles on the warrant are going to be for culvert repairs, which are I think right around $200,000 each, which is expensive, but in one article that was not on there was a culvert that's not in as bad a shape, which would have been about $20,000. So I think over the last, you know, every year, you know, you hear the mantra that it's going to be a tight budget year, and every year things get deferred and things don't get done, and slowly things are creeping up on us that maintenance that should have been done years ago is now kind of coming to a head, and we're starting to have to pay more for that. And so one thing that, and Harold Brown spends a lot of time in reviewing what's there and prioritizing, figuring out how to fix or how to patch things together to keep them from going completely downhill. But it is a little bit, you know, like shoveling water against the tide here, that it just, you know, at some point you have to do the work. The other big one is the front of the town hall, and that's a huge project to prevent that building from going into really just about structural failure across the front, and us having to take all of that down. And Harold will be more than happy to tell you all the gory details of what's there. But in a couple of years, another article that will be coming up at town meeting is the new Minuteman building. That will, to some degree, offset some of the money that we'll be saving from not having to pay for Sawyer anymore. We'll be paying for that. I know Bob Sikansky and the Space Needs Committee are doing a lot of work in forecasting the populations, and we talk about the population starting to go down, but then we talk about Craftsman Village and Century Mill and such coming online, and all of those are not going to be a senior couple with no kids. A lot of those will have kids going into the schools, and that will offset a lot of the other, you know, some of the other reductions in population that you might expect. So I don't think we can write off that the school won't need any work, or additions or something. It's always a trade-off. It's a balance. You know, what do you repair? What do you replace? And in the case of Minuteman, when they went through and did all of the work, all the structural analysis and everything, it ends up cheaper to replace the existing building than to try to repair what's there. And that's something that homeowners are into too. You say, I'm going to fix this wall, and you take the drywall off, and you find dry rot under there, and so pretty soon you've got a complete wall torn apart. And you know, until they really start identifying what the long-term population needs are going to be at the school, and then identify what we're going to need for classrooms and lab space and such to maintain our accreditation and to be able to offer the programs that all of us as parents really want to see at the school, we're not going to know exactly how much space or what kind of space we're gonna need to look at adding or renovating there.
Okay, thanks. I'll go ahead and open it up to you guys. So, who wants to ask the first question from the audience?
I'll go.
Okay, Alice?
Okay. The position of selectman includes several roles. Predominant among them are regulator, advocate, facilitator, and collaborator. The role of collaborator involves working with both town boards and private entities. How do you balance these roles, and what is your experience in town government that demonstrates that balance?
Well, Mark, you start.
Well, as you said, I've served on several boards. I'm used to, so part of the collaboration is understanding and really respecting what the different boards and different organizations do. You know, as a Board of Health member, I would not have presumed to tell a developer how they should be planning something or how to deal with conservation. You know, we had our area of regulations and you know, that's where we kind of had to stay. Along the same lines, you know, if other boards came to us and said, well, in order to meet our criteria, you have to give all these waivers, well, that's kind of, you know, it's kind of stepping on each other's toes, and it's really not a good way for town government to work. You know, especially when you've got volunteers, because a lot of volunteers, if they get stepped on enough, will just say, okay, you really don't value my expertise here, and I'll go somewhere else. And a lot of that goes, you know, and again, you know, with whether it's with developers, whether it's with the police, whether it's with the new dispatch center, a lot of it is respecting people's areas and working with them, understanding what their hot button issues are and how to balance all of those between and come to a reasonable compromise. You know, and you know, I think that the key word there is being able to compromise, and that's not I'll compromise by you agreeing with what I say. It's really meeting in the middle somewhere, coming up with a good solution that everybody's acceptable to everybody.
So I'm the sixth of 7 children. So I grew up in a large family, and that's given me a certain comfort level with chaos and how that plays out. You know, in the planning board, we've had some tense meetings, and sometimes you just have to be comfortable with the tension and let it maybe dissipate and listen and give everybody a chance to talk. And I think in that process, you know, kind of a relaxed process where you don't feel like you have to control the discussion, ideas can surface and solutions can surface in the meeting. So I really believe in, you know, the open meeting process where everybody is welcome, everybody brings their ideas, and working together formulate a solution. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's tense, but I think in the end you end up with a solution that everybody can believe in because they were there or they see it on TV, so they see the deliberation. And so I think that type of open, transparent type of meeting where all of the discussion is going on there, not before, not after, but is very important to, you know, to the town and how it works.
Okay. Sue?
I'd sort of like to know from both of you, each of you, and it keys off of Richard's question, how, with all our various competing needs, whether it's schools, you know, Minuteman, culverts, traffic signals, whatever, how do we keep this town affordable for those of us that live here and affordable for folks that may want to come here because of our good school system pushing, I don't even wanna say what it is, way up there, beyond what it is right now. If Dave Lindsay were here, I mean, he would back me up with that. And I also wanna mention that, Jonathan, you said, you know, talking about the new developments in town and the $1 million in homes, in home values, that doesn't equate to $1 million in tax revenue. So if somebody sells a house for $1 million, we don't get $1 million in the bank.
No, it's.
No.
Right, but I just wanna know how.
Yeah, no, I just wanna answer that, so,
But-
you know, 73 houses at Century Mill Estates at $800,000 or more, in value, so that, an $800,000 house, I think, brings in like $15,000 in taxes, so I think if you do the math, you get, 73 times, you know, 15 to 16,000.
What, I don't wanna get into the details, it's not quite like that, and we have also taken a lot of that new growth already, but nonetheless, my basic question is, how do we keep this town affordable, for those of us that are living here and for those that may want to move here?
Your turn, Mark.
Mine?
Yeah, you kept, he sort of
Okay.
got started there.
Okay.
And then,
Okay, it's unfortunate, nothing is getting cheaper. And, I mean, I think the only, you know, and new residential developments don't necessarily, help our overall tax rate because it puts burdens on the schools and such. The sort of, developments that should be looking to encourage are things like the assisted living, proposed assisted living at Bolton Office Park, which will have good tax revenue, but shouldn't affect the schools at all, I hope. It may affect the ambulance service, but that's a whole separate discussion, that's a separate. And the other, I mean, the only other knob that we really have to push is trying to encourage some, smart commercial development, some commercial development that fits in with the town, that complements what's here, that is a good service to the community so that the community will support it. I think 626 Main Street is a great example of that. I think the Clinton Savings Bank is a great example there. I think that's, you know, I'll leave it to the assessors to chime in on what that did for the you know, the taxes, but it certainly is, the new building is a lot better tax revenue than the old house that was there. But, that being said, we don't want, you know, a Route 9 in down through Shoppers World to spring up along 117. But I think looking at some smart development, looking at, looking where it makes sense to do some rezoning, possibly, I mean, a few years ago, the Canes wanted to rezone part of their property to put some more retail space back in there. They now have another proposal that's starting to float through town, which is really, much more detrimental to the town than any retail development would have ever been. So, you know, I think, you know, when part of us want to say, let's just, you know, shut down development, not do anything, and then complain about the taxes, you know, you can't have it both ways. You know, because salaries go up, expenses go up. I mean, salt and sand prices go up significantly every year. So, you know, at some point, you know, where's the money going to come from? And if we don't have some commercial development like Paragon, like 626, then that money is going to be coming from our pockets. And I'm not sure there's no better answer than that, unfortunately.
Jonathan?
Yeah, so I think you're right, we can't stay ahead just with taxes from residential and from commercial. It's just not sustainable. Eventually, you know, right now we're like at 55% build out in Bolton, and eventually we'll get to 100%. So if you build on all the land, where does the income come from after that? So it's not sustainable. So we've had tax discussions at town meeting, and sometimes they focused on pieces of the budget rather than the whole budget. So if we're gonna cut taxes, if we're going to hold expenses down, we have to look at everything. There are no sacred cows. Everything has to be cut in a fair way. I think in the past, certain areas were a focus, but I think everybody really has to look at things like salaries and benefits. I think those have to be negotiated maybe a little bit harder. I think it's item by item, you have to look at each one if you're going to control costs over the long term.
Okay. Other questions from there? Derek?
Mary Gallion. So just taking this a little further, because this is the reason that I came, was to ask you both what your vision for the town is, and you're touching on it. But I don't, my concern is how are we, it's very similar to what Sue had to say, but how do we keep people here? I'm concerned, as we all know, about our senior citizens. The taxes are just impossible for many to handle. And on top of that, there's no place for them to go if they want to stay in town. Do you want to sell your house? Where do you move to? So to me, it's more than just looking at every line item. I don't know if it's possible to cut anything, often things that are really, really important, historical society, council on aging, people are looking to even these areas to cut that have very small budgets. I would like to hear, do you think it's the role of the selectmen, along with town government, town administrator, and the people in town, to really come up with what our vision, not just another plan, but a real idea of where is Bolton going to be? How are we going to make it attractive to people, not just with school-age children that come in and then leave, but to people to be able to stay here, afford to stay here, and see the rest of their lives here.
Jonathan, you want to start?
So again, that is a very difficult question. I don't think anybody's been able to answer that. So again, this is where, I would look for help. And I think we do have to talk about it. I think we do have to talk about what we're going to do with future savings and future revenue, how we're going to allot it, tax relief, infrastructure, school. We have to break it down and decide together. So it's hard work, and everybody's going to have to be heard. But that's the process I would recommend.
I recommend it be on the agenda of the selectmen.
Mark?
I think when we talk about taxes and the budget and such, there's kind of the elephant in the room that nobody really wants to acknowledge, and that's the school budget. And that is 62% of our overall budget, and the Neshoba assessment, our Neshoba assessment went up 4.4% this year, which is just completely unsustainable. But last year's wasn't a whole lot better, and even though we kind of pushed the school committee to try to contain that down to about 2%, they came in at 4.4. And when you have when that becomes the major driver in the taxes, it's very difficult to do anything else in town. I mean, council on aging gets squeezed. Every other entity in the budget gets squeezed, but we have very little control over the school budget. So you have essentially no control over the school budget. That's purely the school committee. Which in other towns that aren't in the region, the school committee is another department in town, and the advisory and selectmen really do have some say over those budgets. In the region, it's the school committee, and we get given a number that's really about, you know, other than rejecting the budget at town meeting, there's not a whole lot that that we can do about that. We can't amend it unless you had people amending it identically at all 3 towns, but which I don't think we've ever been able to coordinate, but but it's really, when you start to look at that, and that becomes really, where are your tax dollars going? It's not going to infrastructure repairs, it's not going to improving, it's not going to adding new programs, it's not going to better outreach for the seniors, it's going to the schools. So when you say, how do we get people to not move in, go to the schools, then move out of town? Well, if the schools are taking most of the budget to maintain their level of excellence, that's the only thing that's going to be driving and keeping people here. Assisted living, if and when that gets built, will provide an opportunity for some seniors to stay. The town is already giving as generous a tax rebates and as generous programs to seniors as we're allowed to by the state. So we're not really, in fact, we're probably on the over generous side because we don't put any income qualifications on any of those programs. So we're already doing as much as we're legally allowed to there. So lobby your representative to increase what's allowed to be done there. And I suspect that we would continue on. That being said, the more money that we give in the rebate programs to seniors, that money is coming from somewhere. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul here. So it gets tough for all of us.
Well, so it's sort of a follow-up to that. We've had some new leadership on the school committee. There are currently, I think this week, there are 3 finalists for the new superintendent coming in. What would the 2 of you do to improve collaboration between the Board of Selectmen and the school district, between the 3 towns in the school district? Tri-town meets quarterly and the like. What can be done to do that? I guess I think it's back to your turn, Mark.
Okay. Well, I guess, quite honestly, I thought that we had improved that and improved the communications and tried to help give some guidance to the school committee for this budget cycle, and they seem to, when all was said and done, they kind of went and did what they needed to. And part of that's driven by the teachers' contracts that between cost of living and step increases and their benefits. I mean, that forces a certain percentage increase into their budget regardless of anything else that happens. Just like any other negotiated contract, you have your various raises programmed into the contract, and that's what's going to happen regardless of what else is going on. I mean, I think in general, the board has a pretty good working relationship with our school representatives. We meet with them several times a year. At selectmen's meetings, we meet with them. We meet with them at Tri-Town. We periodically, we'll call each other to or email to ask questions to get clarification on something that our fine reporters have quoted in the paper that doesn't quite make sense.
That never happens.
It usually makes sense. There's usually just some context that we need to get clarified.
I don't cover the schools.
I wasn't saying that.
Yeah. I didn't hear him say Nan.
I didn't say Nan.
Right.
Okay.
So I think it just, in general, I mean, I think if you go back 2 or 3 years, the amount of collaboration was almost non-existent. I think we've improved that significantly in the last year or so. But like anything, there's always more room for improvement.
Jonathan?
So I think it is important to have good relationships with the selectmen in Stowe and Lancaster, as well as the school committees in those towns, and trying to meet with them quarterly and trying to work on this issue, together. I'm sure the tax right now it's kind of a divide and conquer situation where each, town is kind of separate and votes separate, but I think there have to be initiatives that all three towns are considering together at the same time, before it comes, before the budget comes in. So trying to track spending, looking at ways to, reduce the budget that all three towns can agree on, I think is very important.
Moderator, I wanted to make a clarification on what Ms. Abdalian said. She mentioned the Historical Society.
Oh,
Commission.
Harry.
Yes, we are commissioned, and the society is private, just
Got
because
it.
this is a very common confusion.
Okay.
I would like to ask the candidates, how about some checking on waste and belt tightening about things in town? For example, I know if I have a critical budget problem, I have to turn the thermostat down, or maybe I have to go to fewer entertainment activities, maybe wear more sweaters and things like that. I have something I've been trying to get fixed about the heat in town hall now for the whole season, and we did have a very mild winter, that has to do with losing heat, and I can't get that addressed. And I think that, these little things that happen, that are done, like just putting the combination sashes down for the winter, your storms and things, it's very important. That's a huge building to heat, and I'm sure there might be places in the schools that could have some belt tightening, so maybe they could address some of those.
Jonathan, you want to tighten the belt first?
Sure. So I think, transparency is very important, and access to information is very important, so that we all can look and make assessments, ourselves. It seems like there are things in the budget, repairs to be made, that just, it'd be much better if they could be online. Items like that, larger items like the repair to the front of town hall would be great if we could see the request for proposal or the specifications that DPW is putting out, and then we could see the bids for that. I think that would, having the extra set of eyes on those type of things would help, and the expertise of many people in town, engineers, could look at that and make suggestions, and I think improve the process and maybe save money.
Mark?
Well, let's see here. Since you never called me to tell me that there was an issue with heat at town hall,
Well,
Martha,
I did
you know my
talk
number. No.
with two
Okay.
people,
Well,
two.
I mean, part of this is, when there are instances of waste or perceived waste, or issues, they need to get, raised to the people that will follow up on them. And if you don't feel like you're getting, that whoever you've told it to is following up on it, well, ultimately, for better or worse, it falls to the selectmen to follow up on it. So, as with most things, my number's in the book. So.
Put you at the top of the list.
No, you don't want to start at the top, start where it's appropriate, but if you're not, but escalate it as you need it. That's true of any issue. As far as, other belt tightening and such, I think the advisory committee, as anybody who's either on advisory, has been on advisory, or has had to go in front of advisory will tell you, every line item, every penny is put, they push to scrape every penny out of every line item that they can. You've been through that, so, and it's not, it's not a fun process for them, or I don't think it is, Craig, they put in a lot of work and it's a lot of hours for them, and certainly the people that are trying to justify their budget aren't having a lot of fun having to do that either. So there's not, over the years we've squeezed a lot of the slack out of the budget. And that shows up in the amount of free cash that we're certifying coming down every year. And, you know, we're not getting the $1 million+ of free cash that we did a few years ago. I think this year was around $500,000. 600, okay, yeah, that's around a half, yeah. So, which is a lot, you know, so we're not, you know, so that belt tightening is continuing. You know, new growth throws a little wrinkle in it. The economy always throws a wrinkle in how things go and who gets new cars and how many there are in town and that sort of thing. But, you know, as far as belt tightening, I mean, I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. As far as, you know, addressing waste or concerns about waste, I'll label it as concerns about waste, because there are some times where there are issues that are, you may perceive as being wasteful, but there's a reason for it, so, or, you know, or not. So, you know, but certainly being able to, you know, if you don't feel like you're getting service appropriately by a town employee, then escalate it up to their supervisor, or, you know, ultimately, you know, it's the Board of Selectmen or the ultimate supervisors in town, so.
Okay. Other question? Yes.
Hi, I've got a comment and.
Could you ask people to give their names for?
Would you give your name, please?
I would be proud to. I'm Charlotte Johnson, Hudson Road. I'm also one of your friendly neighborhood Board of Assessor people. We're really popular now. I just want to clear up a misconception that comes up all the time. And in residential development, a $15,000 tax bill sounds wonderful. However, that will educate 1.7 children. So, in each one of the humongous houses, over one child for losing our shirt. And for that reason, 3 years ago, at town meeting, we opted to purchase the development rights on a large piece of land up towards Harvard, because we laid out all of the factual information on if it was developed with residential housing, what it was going to cost to educate the estimated number of children. And it was way less expensive. Sorry about the frog. It's pollen season, what do you want? So it's a huge misconception that the development and the bigger the house, the better off we are. It's a very dangerous proposition, and for this reason, we're trying, I think, to focus on additional conservation, purchase of development rights, and increasing where we can, commercial development. We can't stop the residential development. We've put, and I don't mean me, I mean we, have put caps on the number of houses to be able to be completed in a year to try to ameliorate some of the damage, but it's huge.
But the state has always knocked those camps down, right?
Only in snob court cases, of which we had one huge one, which I think we've just finished paying off. Anyway, my question, this is really to you, Jonathan. In running for select, in my mind, and I've served now 12 years on Board of Assessors. I'm still waiting for somebody to take my job. But in order to change who the selectmen are, in my mind, there's got to be a compellingly good reason. And my question to you is, what do you feel that you can do that is not being done by those currently sitting on the board, specifically your opponent?
Well, in my last election for the planning board, I ran against Neil Darcy, and it was really important that we talked about the issues, but we didn't talk directly about each other. And that was important because my daughter goes to school, Neil's daughter, and it's just, you know, I'm really glad that we stuck to that. So, you know, I'm not gonna make specific comments about Mark. I think.
That wasn't the purpose of the question, I just wanna know what you
Okay,
can
yeah,
do that
yeah.
is not being done.
So, I think what I've been able to do on the planning board is what I would hope to bring to, the Board of Selectmen. And that is creating a safe, calm space where people feel comfortable to come in. They don't have to come in their armor. They can come in as themselves, share their expertise, share their opinions, with the Board of Selectmen, that they are listened to, considered, they're not denigrated or disrespected. So that's what I would hope to bring, to the Board of Selectmen. And I think in that type of environment, we can make better decisions as a town, decisions with, more of a consensus. Hopefully we won't waste time on divisive issues. It seems like there've been a lot of divisive issues that have taken up, a lot of energy and taken our focus off more important issues, in the last few years. So, that's what I would hope, you know, that's the role I would hope to play on the Board of Selectmen.
Well, Mark, give you a chance to, not necessarily to respond, but to answer essentially the same question. What's essentially your pitch to voters of why you should continue on the Board of Selectmen? What is it that you bring?
Well, I guess I always get a little bit baffled when I hear people talking about wanting more openness, more transparency. All of the work of the selectmen is done in open meeting, other than what we legally have to do in executive session. Sometimes it may not appear that because we get our packets ahead of time. We've been able to review information. We've been able to, I mean, if we're looking for clarification, you know, context or clarification, we can call, you know, the town administrator. But you know, all of the decision making, all of the discussion is in open meetings. And I think that's very important. And I think in general, and I think probably more so than some selectmen. I mean, when we're running a meeting, I let until things start getting repetitive, I let people. You know, we listen to the opinions of the people. That doesn't mean that we're going to agree with them, and it doesn't mean that we're going to, you know, take a poll of the audience and say, okay, who wants option A and who wants option B? Okay, we'll do whatever the audience wants. Because we have to look at overall what we feel is a great thing for the town. But that being said, at least for myself, and I'm sure for the other two selectmen, our decisions are very fact-based. You know, we take the information, the facts that are provided, and mull those over and come up with a solution or you know, or a direction that we want to go in. We don't generally have agendas that we want to pursue within, you know, as a selectman, or at least I know I don't. I'm trying to do what I feel is best for the entire town, not for select groups within the town, but for, you know, overall what's going to be best for everybody. And part of that, you know, since I've lived several places in town, I've gotten several different perspectives on that. Both, you know, living in some older houses over on the east side and living in one of the McMansions over on the west side, and having to deal with 117 every day, or the back roads that everybody else takes to avoid 117. But that being said, I mean, I think the select meetings are open. We are generally approachable, and obviously, you know, we have our touchy points about, you know, the same as everybody else does, especially when, you know, we may feel like we're being respected by the town's, by the speaker. But in general, the meetings are open, we're friendly, or, right, Martha? Yeah.
At least
Okay.
polite, yeah.
Okay. We are polite, yeah, and we do listen to people, and we let and people provide their comments and their input, and then we take it from there.
All right. Next question, I'll go back. Yeah?
I'm Amber, and I'm afraid to say that I am an old timer in town. Live on Main Street. One of the things I'd like us to talk about, since it's been brought up a little bit here, is, last year we had a very fractious town meeting and some very difficult issues. Yeah, well, I thought that was going to be even fractious. Anyway, one of the things I'd like to understand and ask both candidates, if we're wanting to approach that early on, long before town meeting, what could we have done as a board of selectmen and citizens to have made that a more constructive dialogue? You know, if you had to do it over again, what would you do?
At town meeting?
Town meeting, or just even dealing with the issues that made town meeting very difficult?
All right, let's see, I think it's your turn to go first this time.
Wonderful. Well, I think there were really two.
And you can speak high level. You don't have to.
Okay, I mean, I think there were two main issues that kind of came up around town meeting last year. One was 117, the proposal transfer to DOT, and the other was the regionalization of the dispatchers. Certainly the 117 issue is the more contentious of the two. In reality, I'm not sure what could have been done differently. As the selectmen, we held multiple meetings to try to solicit input, certainly, there was a very vocal group that was very against it. There were people who were for it. There were people who contacted us outside of the meetings and said they didn't want to get attacked by the mob, but they supported it. But from a personal perspective, from day one, so start going back to the talks that we were having, the discussion earlier about taxes and how do we prioritize infrastructure and things like that. 117 is a killer on our infrastructure. And there are at least 2 culverts on the west end of town that are going to need to be repaired in the next few years. I mean, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to be done without closing 117 for. I mean, if you look at what was done for the Sampson Road culvert, where it was closed, we closed Sampson Road for a month. You can get away with that for Sampson Road. You can't get away with doing that on 117. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to be addressed, but it's certainly not going to be cheap. But so when you start to look at that and the pavings and all the other stuff that needs to be done for 117, we have a lot of deferred maintenance there that's going to be coming due in the not too distant future. So from a tax perspective and from a cost perspective, handing this back to DOT and saying this is a regional road, you're bound by the same restrictions that everybody else is for doing. It's a historic district, you can't encroach on it, outside of your existing easements and that sort of thing. But through all of the discussions, I was waiting, I was almost hoping that somebody's going to say, when DOT took over this road in this town, they blew apart the historic district, they did all, give me some facts, and I heard a lot of, for lack of a better word offhand, a lot of rhetoric about, how terrible it would be and that they were gonna, bulldoze all of the historic district and all these other, things, but none of them were ever realistic. But there was no way to fight that. So I'm not sure on 117 that there's anything that we could have done that would have been different.
But what would you have done to engage stakeholders earlier so you didn't get that practice?
We did. We had multiple multiple meetings. you know, in here and then over, where do we have the next one? You know, but I mean, we had
Davis
multiple
Hall, we
meetings.
had one in
Yeah,
Davis
yeah, we had
Hall.
one in Davis Hall, we had one here.
I
And
guess,
we want to
I
try
know
to-
the details,
yeah.
I live on Main
Okay,
Street, but I
yeah.
guess the question that I'm asking, it's part of my work, I always do a stakeholder mapping, and I've dealt with boards of selectmen for outside part of the state. And I just, as you sit back and you say to yourself, what could I have done differently to identify those positions long before we got into an argument? What could have been done, and I don't want to.
Well, I guess next time we'll tap you to help guide us through that. I mean, it's, now that I know what you do, you're on the hook.
All right, Jonathan?
So from my recollection, you know, it was 117 was a huge issue, and the other issue was taxes and free cash. And I definitely feel like there was a problem between the Board of Selectmen and the advisory board coming to an agreement about free cash. We should not have come to the meeting and had, you know, the advisory board voting one way and the Board of Selectmen voting another, and, you know, we had to come back for another special, you know, for a special town meeting to resolve that. So I see that as a complete failure. And I don't know why the Board of Selectmen were so hostile to David Lindsay. He is always, you know, he sometimes has said some things, but most often he's very polite when he says things. And I just don't know why some of his concerns couldn't have been, you know, brought into the process. He didn't have to do that. And I think he was treated badly, and his ideas were just rejected, and there was no kind of listening, no power sharing. He was just rejected, and that's what led to that. And I think it's the same arrogance that led to the 117 issue. If you were there at town meeting and you heard the no, that it was like it was rocks thrown at the stage. It was really strong. I mean, it was tangible, the no. You know, it's not just the historic district. This was Main Street from Stowe to Lancaster. Abutters, you know, abutters all along there were upset that this was being pushed through in a non-binding vote at town meeting. So first it was gonna be a vote, and then it became a vote that was non-binding, where the Board of Selectmen could do it even if we said no. So that was really about taking away the rights of abutters, not considering, you know, the effects on our property values, our quality of life. So it's so important, and I've learned this on the planning board. You need to talk to abutters and understand their concerns. I was here in the room, the first hearing, and there were, I think, 50 or 60 people. And I don't think their concerns were addressed that night or the following night. And I think the Board of Selectmen just kept going on their path, and they would not listen. And they kept upping the ante, going from, you know, it's gonna be a town meeting vote to a non-binding vote. So very disrespectful. Both of those things could have been avoided.
Good.
In my 30 years here in Bolton, it's always seemed to me that the biggest issue over and over again has been Main Street and protection of the residential character of Main Street and the historical character of Main Street, because in virtually every city and town that has a busy road, particularly a state highway going through it, it gets eroded over time. People don't seem to have any vision of something perfect that they want to hold on to, and it gets eroded. You know, one house, somebody dies, and so they get approvals to do some kind of commercial thing in the house that maybe doesn't sound too bad, and then that something that's worse in the house, and then there's the next door neighbor, and it gets eroded, and the signs go up, and the curb cuts get made, and the bright lighting comes, and this has happened in virtually all the towns. So I would like to hear a pledge from each of these candidates that they will put above every other issue the protection of the residential and historical character of Main Street.
Jonathan,
Here.
you're first.
Ahead of commercial development, ahead of residential development, ahead of stuff going in the back, you know, some driveway, oh, it's in the back, it won't affect Main Street. I wanna protect the Bolton that adds value to my house and adds pleasure to my residency in this town.
So when people come to visit me, they comment, you know, coming off of 495, how amazing it is that there's a McDonald's there. You know, the people who visit really love, you know, the feeling as you drive in. And, you know, so I do it every day and I take pleasure in it, but when I hear that from visitors, that helps me understand, you know, what the experience might be like for people who are coming to town looking for a home, wanting to live here, or wanting to go to the winery or the golf, you know, the golf courses in Bolton. So it is very, very important that kind of the rural character is maintained as much as possible.
I don't like that much possible.
Well,
I wanna hear a
we
pledge.
can't, we can't, we don't control all the land, and so, for me, it's just important to look at project by project and make sure that it's done as well as it can be.
Now, here's your chance to get my vote.
Well.
Well, as it can be, that's not good enough for me.
If saying yes to the pledge will get you my vote, and you're gonna find somebody else to vote for. The reality is, it's private property. When, you know, for your example, when somebody dies and the estate sells the property to somebody else, they have the right to do with their property, you know, whatever they're legally allowed to, based on subject to zoning. Well, zoning allows in-house businesses, you know, if a lawyer buys it and wants to put their office in the, you know, in part of the house, you know, that's allowed by the zoning. And then, so then they'll come, they'll say, okay, I wanna put a sign out in front to let people know where my office is. And, you know, that they sell eventually and somebody buys it and they wanna do something, you know, and yes, there's some amount of creep there. It's within the limits of what's allowed through zoning. The alternative would be to go back to the zoning bylaws and completely ban in-house businesses, which I think would be to the detriment of the town in general. I'm not sure whether that would be legal or not. We could look at banning signs. We could look, there's things that we could do, but none of it would necessarily prevent the creep. The other thing that you run up against, if you look at the house that was on the lot where Clinton Savings Bank is now, in order to maintain that as a residential property, they were looking at, if I remember correctly, something like a $50,000 septic system because of proximity to wetlands and well and everything else. So in that case, they could look at that and putting that into a very small house, which would have, you know, the septic would have been worth almost as much as the house itself. Or in this case, it went to some fairly smart commercial development to, you know, which is also an asset to the town. And I'm not, you know, so we can't block development. We can't block progress. We are,
Certainly you can.
Well.
Not totally, no, it's subject to laws and subject to the
subject to laws and
regulations.
regulations,
Or you can
and that's,
waive
David,
them.
and that's what we hold people to. As a town, we've made fairly significant investments in conservation land, in agricultural restrictions to help maintain that rural character. But, you know, the reality is also 117 is a major commuting road. So short of going and grinding it back down to gravel, you know, or down to dirt, it's gonna be a commuter road. And, you know, that unfortunately impacts, you know, the residents on 117.
All right, so we are now at 8:38, so I'm gonna take one more question, and then we'll let our gentlemen give their closing statements. So, maybe a couple of questions. You've had one. Bob, somebody in the back?
Sure. Going back to the line of questioning that Terry Adalia and Susan had, you know, we talked about cutting the expenses and stuff like that. And I'd like to ask that question in a different way. Because when you look at the school budget, and some people mentioned it, a lot of people come to town, have their kids go to school, and then leave. The schools are what keep our real estate prices from going down the toilet. People don't move to Bolton for the nightlife. They don't move to Bolton because it's a fashion center, right? They move to Bolton primarily because of the schools. Yeah, there are exceptions, but primarily because of the schools. So anyway, the high real estate prices or the taxes that we pay would be less painful if our housing prices were going up, which they're not. They lag the surrounding communities. Even if they are going up, they're going up slower than the surrounding communities. You've both been in government for several years now. What have you done to make Bolton more appealing to home buyers coming in from outside? And what would you do in the future?
Let's see, who's up first this time? I think you are, Mark.
The selectmen have, well, in town government in general, has kind of some I mean, only some core snobs that we can turn to try to, you know, improve property values. This has been noted. You know, certainly, we all talk about the excellence of the schools and such, but in a lot of the surveys and a lot of the rankings on the Department of Education website and such, we're down in the, I mean, realistically, we're down around the, you know, 75 to 80th percentile. You compare that to some of the surrounding towns, which are much higher, and clearly, you know, people, you know, if you're looking at what town do I want to move into to get the best schools, and you start looking at that, we may not fare so well. So certainly on the school side, the question is, why have we been lagging in that, you know, 75 to 80th percentile, and what are the schools doing to improve that? What do the towns have to do to prod the schools into doing something about that? And so that's one part of it. And again, it's a very, the selectmen, planning board, you know, all of the town government has very, there's not a lot that we can do to improve the rankings of the schools. The other part of it, we do have a little bit more control over, and that is the commercial opportunities that are in town. And I know you're gonna, you know, you'll complain about this, but I mean, you know, looking at, you know, if you compare us to Stowe, you know, I mean, you know, Stowe is a favorite comparison, Lancaster's a favorite comparison. Commercially, we have really very minimal commercial opportunities for it and such to draw people into town. You know, with the salt box, when the salt box was closed for so long, there wasn't anything to draw people there. Now that it's coming back and, you know, coming back to life, hopefully that will be a draw. You know, Clinton Savings Bank, you know, in and of itself isn't a draw, but it does show that the town is, you know, developing some commercial properties and some things to help draw people and some So, continuing on in that, I mean, I know with Town Common, that'll hopefully be a draw. You know, there's been some discussion about having a coffee shop of some sort there. I think, Frank Patterson at 626 Main is looking at doing something similar. You know, those will help draw people, give people an outlet to, you know, maybe to improve the nightlife, or at least the afternoon life maybe, but, you know, that being said, you know, looking at what can we do as a town to encourage the kind of commercial development that the residents want and take advantage of, and that would help be a draw. It's a big part of it. Prodding the school committee to, you know, start to understand and address why we're stuck in that 75th to 80th percentile. Looking at some of the cultural opportunities in town, whether it's historical society, commission society, you know, or some of the other, you know, the Friends of the Bolton Library or whatever. Looking at those and getting those people to help kind of sell the town.
Right. John?
Yeah, so I've been having discussions with my daughter about MCAS. And so when we throttle the schools, you know, because we want our rating to go up, then, you know, the superintendent throttles the teachers, and the teachers have the kids learning for MCAS and not just learning for life, for preparation for college. So, you know, I just don't think you can, like, expect, you know, to increase property values on the back of the school. I think.
No, actually, my question was just the opposite. My
Yeah,
question was,
yeah.
you know, the schools are like set to sell it. What are you gonna do to make Bolton more appealing to live in?
So I would just say there's no quick fix. You can't give away 117 and get higher property values. It is, you have to think long-term, you have to think quality of life, and you have to take each project as it comes, you know, like we have on the planning board. So when 626 Main Street comes in, you have to look at that project and see how is that going to add something to Bolton. And you have to look at, you know, Clinton Savings Bank, you have to think about sidewalks, you have to think about infrastructure. And this is the work that we have to do. It's thinking long-term about projects and how we want to spend our money to increase the quality of life in town. And that is what's going to raise, you know, property values. I feel very optimistic long-term about Bolton. Like, if you want to sell this year, I mean, I think it's, you know, maybe you're not so happy, but long-term, if you see what's happening in the area, you see the number of houses that are being built in the area, you see the wonderful businesses going in Hudson, the restaurants, the ice cream store. It's like this amazing transformation is happening regionally. And I think Bolton might be undervalued now, but as things grow more and more dense, as more and more exit stops are filled with McDonald's and, you know, kind of big box stores, and Bolton keeps its rural character, we are going to become more and more valuable place to live.
All right, I think that's a good note to leave it on. So I'm going to give these guys a couple of minutes just for any closing statements. And I think you have the you wanted to toss and you went second first, so you go first.
Well, I hope this has been educational to everybody. Hopefully answered some of your questions, and you know, I think there is a great deal of respect from the selectmen to the volunteers and everybody else in town government. You know, we do our best to be open and transparent, but that doesn't mean, you know, opening everything up to you know, town meeting vote for every little issue. I think already is a great place to live. I think long-term it will continue to be a great place. I think, like every other community, we have our challenges, and hopefully those challenges remain with, you know, sidewalk repairs and infrastructure, not with combating, you know, major health or safety issues.
So,
Thank you for coming, thank you for your questions and for listening. I think we can do better. I think the board of selectmen can do much better. In terms of listening, working with people, being more transparent, deliberating in public. I think we can do much better. That's kind of.
all right, thanks again, everyone, for being here, especially thanks to the Friends of the Bolton Public Library for hosting this and for providing the snacks that those of you watching this on TV some night in the next 4 weeks will get to enjoy. A reminder again, 2 weeks from tonight, we're gonna have a budget information session here. So take your warrant, mark it up, come in, ask the questions, and, you know, be ready for town meeting. That doesn't mean you don't get to ask questions at town meeting too, but hopefully this will help everybody understand the budget and be prepared for the discussion that night. So thanks again, appreciate it. Thank you, guys. That's all I have.